Welcome to Marking the End Times. I'm Mark Hitchcock, and it's great to be back home after 2 weeks in Greece. My wife and I, as I mentioned in the last couple of weeks' videos, have been on a Journeys of Paul trip to Greece and to Turkey. We went to the city of Ephesus, which is in modern-day Turkey. We were there for a couple of weeks with 79 people, basically tracing Paul's second and third missionary journeys. And it was a great trip, but it's always, as you know, it's always great to be back home again. And I hope you enjoyed the videos that we did on site while we were there. It's a little bit different, when you do these videos there, sometimes cars will drive by behind you or, people will be walking around. But, we did the best we can with those videos. And we actually tried to do another one in Corinth at the judgment seat, the Bema seat there, and they wouldn't allow us to video there. So I'm really sorry we weren't able to do that. But maybe sometime in the future, we're back there, we'll be able to get permission ahead of time and do that. But on today's program, I want to talk about the super escalation that we see right now between Israel and Hezbollah, who's over, of course, in Lebanon. This dreaded, what's been dreaded by Israel for a long time, that the two-front war could easily become a reality very soon. Israel's fighting, of course, against Hamas down in the south, trying to eradicate them, but since Israel and Hamas have been fighting, Hezbollah has been attacking Israel constantly in the north, kind of provoking Israel. We've also had attacks from Iraqi groups. We've also been attacks from terrorist groups in Iraq that are backed by Iran, from the Houthis down in Yemen. So Israel's kind of being surrounded, but the real flashpoint right now is on Israel's northern border with Hezbollah. The red lights are flashing. I mean, this is happening in a big way right now, and the alarm bells are sounding. Since October 7th, when the Hamas came in and massacred the people in southern Israel, about 60,000 people in Israel, in the northern part of Israel, have been displaced from 40 different communities, because immediately Hezbollah began to fire rockets into the northern part of Israel. And this has been escalating now, and there's a lot of fear that all-out war is going to break out between Israel and Hezbollah. Let me just read a few of the headlines. These are just a few of hundreds I could read. In Foreign Affairs, there's a headline that says, Israel's next front, Iran, Hezbollah, and the coming war in Lebanon. The Wall Street Journal just yesterday, a headline that says, Israel and Hezbollah move closer to full-scale war. Al Jazeera says, Hezbollah ready for an all-out war with Israel, deputy head says. Reuters says, is the Hezbollah-Israel conflict about to spiral? In the Times of Israel, says IDF chief says, Israel nearing decision on whether to launch a war against Hezbollah. And also in the Times of Israel, says Benjamin Netanyahu warns, we're ready with extremely powerful response to these Hezbollah attacks. So Israel right now is approaching a decision point of whether they're going to launch an attack against Hezbollah in the north. And this is based on a lot of different things. First of all, since October 7th, there have been 5,000 attacks by Israel and Hezbollah against one another combined. So 5,000 attacks. They've had to, in Lebanon, a lot of people there have been displaced. In northern Israel, as I said, 60,000 Jews have been displaced. And so what's happening there right now is reaching really a breaking point or a boiling point. Now, a couple of things have precipitated some of this. Hezbollah has just recently launched drones into Israel. Now, they've done that before, but they've never launched an entire squad of drones. A swarm of drones came into Israel. Also, Israel, a couple of days ago, downed what they call the suspicious aerial target. They're not defining what that is. But they're launching a lot of missiles, obviously, and rockets into Israel as well. Another thing that's happened is some of the rockets and some of the drone fire that's come into northern Israel has sparked wildfires. There have been widespread wildfires. They're being called a nightmare. 2,500 acres in northern Israel have burned as a result of these rockets coming into northern Israel. They're saying it's going to take years and years for the land there to recover. So all this has been ignited by these rocket barrages that are coming into Israel. Now, just to kind of back up for a moment and give a little bit of background about this, What's being warned against, and what really the flashing red lights are saying, is that Israel is going to attack Hezbollah. It's going to be an all-out war. But this would be the third war, the third Lebanon War, in really about the last 40 or 50 years. To give a little bit of background on this, the first Lebanon War started June the 6th of 1982. It was called Operation Peace for Galilee. It's interesting, when I'm in Israel, our guide there, the same guide I've used for many years, he was in that first Lebanon War, and his tank was the first tank to be hit in that first Lebanon War. In fact, he was in a museum some years ago and saw a tank there and realized it was his old tank. And one of the men in there was killed, another was badly wounded. He was wounded as well. But there was a brutal war, the first Lebanon War, 1982, in the summer of 82. The second Lebanon War was a 34-day war in July into early August of 2006. And that's the last war they had now. So between the first Lebanon War and the second Lebanon War was 24 years. Now from the second Lebanon War to today is 18 years. What's interesting is these wars always seem to happen in the summer. Something I've always noticed before. You have the first Lebanon War, June, the second Lebanon War, July to early August. Now here we are in June again with this third Lebanon War being threatened. And the fighting has steadily increased. In fact, just this last week, Israel has authorized calling up 300 to 350,000 reservists if needed. Now, some of that may be related to what's happening down in Gaza with Hamas, but that's an incredible number of troops to be brought forward as reservists. I think it shows how fearful Israel is about what's happening there up in the north. It's never reached this stage before, and Hezbollah is a much more powerful foe now than they were when Israel fought them back in 2006. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu just said a couple of days ago that if Israel has to go to war against Hezbollah, that they're going to turn Hezbollah or turn the city of Beirut in Lebanon into Gaza. So these are the kind of threats that are being made back and forth. And so this is a very serious situation. Now, at the same time this is happening, Reuters has an article that says Iran's allies in Iraq are firing at Israel. Could that trigger a wider war? So you've got Israel fighting up kind of on the north against Hezbollah. You've got these proxy groups in Iraq firing into Israel. They're the Iranian-backed Shiite groups, and that they've ramped up their rocket and missile attacks on Israel. In fact, just a few days ago, a cruise missile, and all Israel said about it is it's just from the east. A cruise missile actually landed in Israel. And again, they believe it's probably from these Iranian-backed Shiite groups over in Iraq. So we're seeing a regional escalation now from Iran's network of allies. This axis of resistance that it's often called. And Israel is being squeezed from all sides. Now, at the same time this is happening, the U.S. and other nations are pressuring Israel to accept negotiations and a ceasefire down in Gaza. So it's kind of difficult to think about, pressuring someone to come up with a ceasefire at the same time they're being attacked by all these various enemies. So the situation there in Israel today is very serious. Now, behind all of this, we know, is Iran. We know that Iran's behind it all. They're one of the key nations in Ezekiel 38 and 39 of this coalition that's going to invade Israel in the end times. And I said this a couple of weeks ago, but I want to kind of drill down a little bit further on this. In Ezekiel 38, in verses 1 through 6, you have 10 proper names that are given there. One of the names is Gog, who's the leader of this invasion, but the other 9 names that are given are places. They're geographical locations. We know what they are today. Rosh, which is Russia, Meshech, Tubal, Togarmah, and Gomer. These are modern-day Turkey. But one of the nations mentioned there in Ezekiel 38:5 is modern-day Iran. It's mentioned called Persia. But I mentioned this a few weeks ago. At the very end of the passage, when it's talking about these specific nations that will be involved, and then it just says, and many peoples with you. And I believe it's very possible that the many peoples there that are mentioned could be these allies of Iran, that this axis of resistance, Hezbollah, Hamas, if they're not totally defeated, these Iranian-backed proxy groups in Iraq, the Houthis. These could be the many peoples. In other words, he doesn't mention more nations. He just said there's going to be more peoples there with you. And so it seems to me that these could be the many peoples, these surrogate proxies of Iran, who are part of this invasion that come into Israel in the end times. So the setup for the Gog and Magog war just continues, I believe, to happen before our eyes. And it could be that within the next few days, within the next few weeks, that an all-out war is going to break out on Israel's northern border with Hezbollah. And if it happens this time, it's going to be much more brutal, much longer than it was in 2006 or in 1982. And once that starts, a wider war of escalation could easily break out. And again, all of this is setting up for what the Bible predicts. And so, as we see these things happening in our world today, we need to continue to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. All these things that are happening there, they're being squeezed from every side. They're being squeezed militarily. They're having rockets fired in, but they're also being squeezed diplomatically from every side as well. So we need to continue to pray for Israel. We need to pray that this northern front war does not break out. We need to pray that that can be averted. We're going to transition now to our question and answer time for subscribers only. And we're going to answer 4 great questions. One is, what if you're truly saved and love the Lord but are having premarital sex? What if you're married but separated and dating others? What if you're a bisexual? The Bible says none of those who do this will see the kingdom of God. And there's another question about the 4 horsemen in Revelation chapter 6, the white horse, the red horse, the black horse, the pale horse. The question was wanting to know that since these colors are on a lot of the national flags of Israel's enemies, do you think that God is telling us something with these colors? Another question is, what will we do during the millennial rule and reign of Christ? Will we still be married during this time? Will our children grow up during this time, or will they not know us as mom and dad? And then one final question. We hear a lot about the birth pangs, but what exactly is the birth? Is it the rapture, the tribulation, or the second coming of Christ? So we're going to go now and answer these great questions. Again, if you're a subscriber, hang on there. We'll answer these questions here in just a moment. If you're not a subscriber, would like to be, you can go to endtimes.com and sign up there just for $7 a month. And I think if you do that, you'll consider that to be a great investment in your spiritual life.